My name's John, and I'm an addict. And thank you, Nancy, for inviting me out here. And am I good? Am I on focus? Okay. Uh, it's good to see you, Roxy. I've known Roxy for a lot of years. It's this is the first time I've been here at this alumni meeting. I went to Fred Brown House. Was my clean date is March 19th, 1990. Remember, I was going to some, I was staying at my parents' house, you know, uh, because, they were the only ones that would allow me to come and sleep at their house. And, uh, and I can remember it, and I was just thinking about it. I met this guy at a meeting, and he told me, "Hey, man, there's a place where you guys can crash out, and try to get clean." And I didn't have no intentions of getting clean. I didn't have any intentions of getting sober. I just was sick and tired of the way my life was going, man. I was living in a camper shell on Foot Street in Anaheim, and and I didn't know how I got there, man. I was just, I had all the opportunities in life to prosper, but for me as an addict, I was always that kind of guy that I didn't want to do the right thing. I didn't. I was, I always wanted to, like they were sharing earlier, I always wanted to lie, cheat, rob, and steal. That's what I did, and it wasn't that, I grew up that way. I come from a decent family, where my parents were, they provided and they had their dysfunction. Uh, my mom was a great enabler, and my dad was like a rageaholic, but they weren't out, you know, uh, uh, doing things to me or my sisters or my brothers that were harming us, but they were teaching us certain traits of secrecy. They, oh, we do, but don't tell them that. Oh, you can do that, but don't let them know you're doing it. And I grew up my life like that, you know, keeping secrets, and then throughout my life, you know, uh, I was keeping secrets from them, you know, and, and it just grows, for me. The secrets just grow in the dark like a mushroom, man. And what I was taught here is you bring them out to the light and it kills it. And then once that happens, I'm able to learn something new. But first, I'll qualify a little bit. Is I grew up here in Wilmington, and I can remember, as a kid, not always feeling something. I didn't know what it was as a child, but I knew there wasn't something right. Because I always had, I think it was a feeling now doing step work and going through uh, prayer and meditation. What I realized when I was a child that I was always felt less than. I had these emotional feelings that I didn't feel as good as, less than, uh, and I didn't feel like I was, you know, I never felt like I was good enough, inside. But I couldn't let anybody know that. I couldn't show any weakness, So what I would do with that was I would have to take that over the top so either I felt less than or I felt better than. I was never just okay just being me, So when you're feeling better than, that means you got to do crazier stuff. You got to do more drugs. You got to it usually got me into trouble, So, you get that person that feels like this, and then that person that feels like that, you're constantly crashing, that roller coaster that we ride. And so I started using drugs at an early age. And probably like most of us, you sip a little bit of alcohol, then you smoke a little weed, and it constantly progressed, And then sometimes, somewhere down that line, I don't know where it was, but it happened early because it says, like in the literature, I used to live and lived to use. That's the way my life was. All the other stuff was like schooling and, you know, hanging out with my family. All that stuff went to the wayside. My main concern was partying and partying and partying. Then at the age of 17, I got a girl pregnant, and at the time I could remember that my life's over. I got to raise this kid. I don't know what I'm doing, and I have her, and like she's the problem. I never looked at myself as poor her. She got me. I was always in trouble. And I'd go out and get loaded, and I'd come get arrested, and I'd come back home. Oh baby, and this kept happening. Through my addiction, and then finally, every time I went back out, I would come back and I'd say, you know what? Oh, I'm not gonna drink anymore, or I'm not gonna do this drug, but you know what? I'll still smoke weed, and then I'd be okay for a minute, and then all of a sudden, the cycle would start up again, and it did that for quite a few years until I reached the age of 26, and I was living on the streets, and she wanted nothing more to do with me, and the family wanted nothing more to do with me, and I burned all my bridges, and I couldn't, I would get a good job, and I couldn't keep it because I lived to use and used to live. I couldn't make it to work, I was too busy getting loaded, and I can remember that I went to go borrow some money from my parents' friend's house, and my first moment of clarity that I had, I wasn't even in the program yet. I can remember like it was yesterday. I can remember my parents knocking on the door, and then my mom and dad opening the door. You got the codependent mother and the rageaholic father, and I'm just waiting for my dad to scream, you know. And my dad came up to the door, and my mom was sat there standing, and I remember my dad looking me straight in the eye and saying, "John, you are nothing but a junkie." And for probably the first time in my life, I didn't have a, a yeah, but, or, because I have excuses all over the place. I pull them out of everywhere, and it hit, and I said, you know what, he's right, because I can't stop. And then the great codependent, my mother, you know, God bless her, she said, well, if you stay clean, you can come over here and spend the night at our house. I was like, I'm on that. Because I can use that. And I know how to manipulate and work that, massage it a little bit. And it was funny because, the second I said that, the disease popped right in, it said, it started manipulating, and so I went over to their house, and, I had an old, insurance card, uh, and, my mom made the call. The people who are at that place are like, man, this guy's not serious. He didn't even give a mom call. And it was like, we ain't gonna help him. And they said, what we'll do is we won't put him in inpatient, we'll put him in outpatient. And so what had happened, I went to the outpatient. My mom gave me a ride. And and then and then the miracles started happening, man. I went to that outpatient and they told me to go to this meeting. So I went to the meeting and I met you guys, and you guys welcomed me at the door. I can remember, I went, my very first meeting was on a Friday night in Manhattan Beach. And, and they had this huge dude, man, this old Chicano dude, man, covered in about 20 pounds of tattoos. And this is in 1990, when tattoos weren't a fad. Like now they're, everybody's, my grandma's got tattoos. Everybody's got tattoos and whatever. Back then, it wasn't a popular thing. And this big old homeboy, man, it's like, yeah, it looked like he carried San Quentin. And he came in, and I was a speed freak crackhead. He stuck me in his armpit, and he drove me around. He said, "Get this guy's number." I'm like, "Yes, sir." He said, "Get this guy's number." I'm like, "All right." I'm just waiting for him to let me go so I can run, because I know he can't outrun. And he was the secretary of the meeting, and so I got some numbers. I mean, that's before cell phones, so you'd have to write it down, and I miss that. I truly miss that in Narcotics Anonymous, man, because it writing a number down and getting your name, it helps me remember. That's why we do so much writing here. Because putting it from here to paper, it's important because I retain it a lot better than just dee 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 into my phone. You know, but so I start going to this meeting, and it's hard to sit here and share about being here 30 years. So I start going to these meetings. Let me go on, and I hear this guy say, "Hey, I'm staying at my mom's house, and I'm going to this little outpatient thing." And this guy says, "Yeah, there's this place in San Pedro where there's a bunch of guys that are trying to get clean." And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to get clean. I didn't know what I wanted. That's all I knew is I knew I didn't want what I had, and I really didn't know what I wanted, you know, but I knew I didn't want what I had. So he said, "Hey man, come talk to this dude," and I can't remember how much it was. I think it was like $200 or it was some crazy amount of money. Yeah, $200. I wanted to stay there, I ain't gonna spend $200 a month on nothing but what I eat. He says, "Come talk to this guy." This was after being clean a few nights, and I was seeing this dude up at this Friday meeting, and so I was going constantly. So I was at my mom and dad's for a little bit, and he said, "Go to this," and that's when I first met Fred Brown. He sat me on the couch and he interviewed me, and he said, "Yeah, you know." I can't even remember what he said, but I remember it was a house right there on 13th and Mesa, this 2-story house. And I can remember the guys at the house. I remember, Bobby Ramos was the manager, and Freddie Pie was there. And, there was a bunch of dudes that that aren't around no more. That and and that's where I got started getting my foundation here in a 12-step program. And so I moved into the house. Still didn't have a job. Was living on disability. You know, the wife trying. The wife trying. You know what? I'm gonna get the wife back. I'm gonna get her back. That was by this time I'm 26. I got 3 kids. She's working. I'm just been dead weight for the last few years. And So I can remember going to a few meetings and reading these steps because I think I did the steps in 3 meetings. I had worked all the steps in the first 3 meetings. Pretty good. They weren't too bad. And and so I go to her, and I said, "Oh, I got to make some amends." And I said, "Babe, you know what? I love you, and I'm here to make some amends, but I just love my drugs more." That was like, she's like, "Nah." And that's why these steps are in order. Because I'll make a fool out of myself every time. And because that's what I do. I don't know how to follow directions. I follow my own directions, and that got me a living quarters on Foot Street in Anaheim in a camper shell with no aluminum on it and 5 other guys. That's how I live, with my good directions. So I start going to these meetings, and I start meeting you guys. You know, I meet Freddie Aquino, I meet Roxy, and you know, I meet all these. I met my first sponsor, but this other big dude, that would grab me and tell me to get numbers, man. He was there was an attraction there where I was like, you know what, man, he made me feel comfortable. He got me some numbers. I'm going to ask this guy to sponsor me. And it had probably been about a month. I probably had around 30 days, and I went back to the meeting, and I said, "Where's Big John at?" So, "Oh, he's not here today." Okay, come back next week. "Where's Big John at?" "Oh, well, he didn't make it. He didn't come to the meeting." And by the third meeting, "Hey, where's Big John at?" He said, "Yeah, Big John, decided to go back out, and he died." And that's how sinister this disease is. It'll kill you like that. And it doesn't care how big you are, how many tattoos you have, how much time in the pen you've been. If you got babies at home, if you have loved ones, it does not discriminate. It will kill you. And so I started, and I can remember this guy telling me, and I felt real bad. He goes, and I never got it, he goes, "Better him than you." I was like, that's a crappy thing to say. You know what I mean? That's a really crappy thing to say. The longer I realize, what the meaning behind that is, and the thing that I'd never liked is, some of us got to die for some of us to live, because I got a fatal disease and it always wants to tell me I'm okay, even when I'm not, and, I'm like homeboy, man. I'm a liar, a cheat, and a thief. I'm so good I could lie and cheat, and steal for myself. And that's the way I am. So I start going to meetings, and then I met this old veterano guy, man, and and what was nice about this guy, man, I can remember him coming up and sharing about his. All these other guys were telling about their penitentiary stories, and they were with Al Chapo, or all that. You know how they put together San Quentin, and I couldn't relate, man. I couldn't relate. I never went to San Quentin. Most I did was like Harbor, or a couple of weekends, and at the county. And I couldn't relate. And I met this old dude, man, George Magdaleno, and he was always sharing about. He had a brother. Had George Magdaleno and his brother Frank. I hated Frank. Man, Frank had this crazy eye. And I looked out over here. He was looking, and he was real harsh. He was like, "Hey, you, this guy, he was real harsh kind of guy." And Frank was more, our George was more caring and understanding, more mellow. We're the two opposite brothers. But the one thing my decision on making George my sponsor was he got clean in 1963, and that was the year I was born. Huh. Dumb luck. But he sponsored me, and he took me through the steps, slowly. And all he kept telling me, John, is just stay out of your way. If you come up with a good idea, do the opposite. Because whatever it is, it's got to be better than what you're thinking. So, I start going to these meetings and I start building history here. And that's one of the greatest things that has been given to me here is being involved in the history around here of recovery. Meeting the Roxys, the Fred Browns, the Freddie Aquinos, the George Magdalenos, even the ones that I didn't care about, like Hank and other guys that I didn't care about. But at least, it was kind of like, that dysfunctional family where, yeah, I don't quite get along with you, but all right, we're still in the same boat. So we keep rowing in the same direction. So I start working some steps with George, and what I liked about George is he was always sharing about his grandkids and his family. And at that time, I was trying to get my family back together, but because I wanted to get the job back. I lost the house, the job, the wife, the kids, Oh, and then I had broken my back, when I was out there using. So what uh, what happened was through working some steps and slowly working through the process, some of the I just lost my train of thought. Through working the steps and working with George and building some history around here, I started to build a family, and I started building some self-worth about myself, and I started getting a commitment. And so I started to build, a little bit of responsibility, and back then that, they would have like, this is a smoking section, this is a non-smoking section, and it was split down the middle. I don't know how the smoke didn't cross, but it did. But picking up ashtrays, and it was like, I don't smoke, so he said, well, just pick it up for the people that do, and he started getting me to think something other than my favorite subject, me, because I am my favorite subject. And, when I think of me, I tend to go in a spiral downhill. So, I start coming to these meetings and I start meeting other people. And like for me, uh, I start to become a little more responsible with the kids. And I didn't get back together with the ex-wife, because she was done with me and she moved on to her own episode, her next chapter, right? Or Sancho, or whoever. Yeah, So, and that was the beginning of Narcotics Anonymous here for me, and I started meeting people. And, I come up here, we don't get paid, but I'm getting $5 from Travis. He said, you mentioned my name, he's gonna give me 5. All right, Travis, now it's 10. So he's on Zoom. But anyways, he's one of the guys that I met. And check this out. He's part of my history. He lives up in Washington. And And I met him, he was like 18 years old. I was like 26 years old. We met in Manhattan Beach driving down the street, and he was asking me, "Hey, is there a meeting here some?" I mean, just randomly like that. And we've been friends ever since, you know. And that's the history I have here in Narcotics Anonymous. I've never done anything consistently in my entire life until I got to the rooms in Narcotics Anonymous, you know. And you know, for me, it's always been, you know, when I got here, I wanted her back, I wanted the job back, I wanted all this back, and I need it right now. You know, my problem was, you know, and I was good at getting those things. The only problem I had is I didn't know how to keep them. Once I get these things, you know, I don't know how to keep them. So what happened was, you know, I kept going through these steps and doing the fourth step. You know, it takes a look at yourself and look at my patterns that I'm going through, you know, and look at my shortcomings. You know, I start to look at, you know, all these patterns that I have and the traits that I came into Narcotics Anonymous with come together and do all that damage. And then when I get to the later steps, I get to start making amends for that stuff, which I didn't want to do. And which I still, you know, I've owed big amends to like my parents, you know, for a lot of years, you know, and because I was always that screw up kid, you know, and you guys taught me how to be there for them when they were living with me and passing away. And, you know, you know, the hard part about it is I didn't want to do it. You know, I had 30 years clean at the time, 29 years clean, and, you know, and it was still hard for me to do it, you know, because I'm so selfish and self-centered. You know, I still want to do what I want to do, you know, and I don't think that's ever going away. But what I get through it is through a loving higher power helps me get through it, working these steps, being a service, and all those other things that don't have to do with John. It's all that giving it away stuff that helps me get through the stuff I need to get through. Because, you know, left to my own devices, I'm there, Foot Street in Anaheim, in a camper shell, you know. And, you know, my life today has is a blessing. You know, I work in a field that I love, but I still don't love getting up and having to go to work. You know, I have things like, you know, I still don't like having to go pay the bills, you know, and but I get to do those things today because you guys taught me how to show up and go to work. You taught me how to pay my bills, you know, and teach me how to be kind with others, you know, and that's what I learned in that recovery house. And what I learned to deal with is all those personalities and learn how to follow direction. Because I'm the guy that takes direction. You give me something, I'm gonna do the opposite. I don't care if it's bad for me. You know, I don't want to listen. So if you're new here, and I want to see a hand. How many people here has been in recovery before? How how many people is this their first time in recovery? First time. See, those are the ones that have a chance to never get a newcomer chip again. And yeah, I haven't found it necessary to go back out since I found a seat here. But that doesn't make me, if I don't do what needs to be done, I could be asking one of you newcomers that to be my sponsor. So if you're new here and you if you're new here, the war's over and you lost. So the sooner you realize that, you can move forward. As long as you're fighting, that's what the, anything I ever let go of had claw marks on it. But, you know, you know, how low do you want to go? I remember this one guy that used to share, he'd get up to the podium and be like, this is the #2 recovery program in the world. And it's like, yeah. He says, the #1 recovery program is the graveyard. You'll never relapse there. Like, whoa. And I've been to thousands of meetings and I've never heard it. I've never heard somebody to come in to the rooms after a relapse say, you know what? It was working out there. I just come here to tell you guys, you know, the it's work. Never heard it. But my head will tell me something different. It's going to be different for me. All right. That's all I got to say. And thank you guys.